In the year 2147, Earth was an ordinary place, bustling with its daily routines and human life. However, beyond the stars, a powerful alien empire known as the Zephyrians prepared for an invasion. The Zephyrians were a technologically advanced race with a long history of conquering planets. They had studied Earth and decided that it would be an easy target. They believed humans were primitive and weak, an idea that would soon be tested. The Zephyrians had developed massive starships equipped with advanced weapons and shields. From their hidden space stations, they launched their fleet toward Earth, confident that the conquest would be swift and simple. The Zephyrians' leader, Supreme Commander Zalor, was certain that this mission would be another easy victory. His arrogance was fueled by countless successful invasions of less advanced worlds. As the Zephyrian ships approached Earth, they detected no significant defense systems or military forces capable of opposing them. From their perspective, Earth appeared vulnerable. They began their assault with a calculated bombardment of the planet's major cities, intending to cause maximum chaos and disarray. The alien ships unleashed devastating energy blasts, targeting key locations across the globe. Their plan was to shock and terrify humanity into submission. However, the Zephyrians had underestimated the humans. Instead of surrendering, Earth's defense systems, which had been secretly upgraded in recent years, began to activate. Military leaders, who had been preparing for potential threats, responded quickly. Nations around the world scrambled to deploy their forces and counter the invasion. Human fighters took to the skies in advanced jets, and ground troops manned newly designed defensive weapons. As the Zephyrian ships continued their assault, they were met with an unexpected resistance. Human fighter pilots engaged the alien ships with a fierce determination. The Zephyrians, used to overpowering weaker foes, were surprised by the humans' skill and bravery. The alien ships, which had been designed to be nearly invincible, now faced a challenge they hadn't anticipated. Human technology, while not as advanced as the Zephyrians, was being used in innovative ways that made the alien attackers rethink their strategy. Commander Zalor watched in disbelief as his ships faced unexpected resistance. His initial confidence began to wane as he saw that humans were not folding under pressure. Instead, they were fighting back with a surprising amount of coordination and resourcefulness. Zalor's orders became more frantic as he tried to regain control of the situation. The Zephyrians had never encountered a species that could fight back so effectively and organized. The Zephyrian forces quickly realized that their initial plan was failing. The bombardment, which was meant to break the human spirit, had only strengthened their resolve. Earth's defenders were not just reacting, they were adapting and launching counterattacks that pushed the alien ships back. The Zephyrians had to reassess their approach. The invasion, which was meant to be quick and easy, was turning into a prolonged battle. As the first day of the invasion came to a close, the Zephyrians were left stunned. They had expected a swift victory, but instead faced a resilient and determined enemy. The initial shock of their plan not working gave way to a realization that humanity was not as easily defeated as they had thought. The Zephyrians were now faced with the challenge of overcoming an opponent who was fighting back with unexpected strength. The Zephyrian leaders convened to discuss their next move. The confidence that had driven them to invade Earth was replaced with a growing concern. They had underestimated the fighting spirit of humanity, and now they had to figure out how to deal with a situation that was quickly spiraling out of control. The invasion had not gone as planned, and the Zephyrians were left to grapple with the new reality of human resistance. The first part of the invasion had ended with the Zephyrians facing an unexpected challenge. They had come to Earth expecting an easy victory, but had instead encountered a fierce and determined defense. As the conflict continued, the Zephyrians would have to confront the reality that humans were not the weaklings they had assumed. The stage was set for a struggle that would test both sides in ways they had never imagined. As the days of the Zephyrian invasion dragged on, it became clear that the humans were not going to surrender easily. The Zephyrians, who had expected a swift victory, were increasingly frustrated by the stubborn resistance they faced. Earth's cities were burning, but the fires of human determination burned even brighter. The Zephyrian fleet had initially overpowered human defenses with ease, but their confidence began to erode as they encountered fierce and unexpected resistance. Human forces, though initially caught off guard, quickly adapted and fought back with surprising skill. In space, Earth's fighter pilots, flying advanced aircraft with nimble maneuverability, engaged the Zephyrian ships in high-speed dogfights. The Zephyrians were used to overwhelming their enemies with sheer power, but the humans used their agility and tactics to strike back. One of the most stunning examples of human resistance occurred in the skies above New York City. The Zephyrians had launched a full-scale assault on the city, aiming to break the spirit of its defenders. However, a squadron of human pilots, led by Commander Sarah Mitchell, managed to intercept the invading forces. The Zephyrians were taken aback by the humans' tactical acumen. Mitchell's squadron used hit-and-run tactics to target the weak points of the Zephyrian ships, causing significant damage and forcing the alien fleet to retreat temporarily. On the ground, human soldiers and civilians alike fought bravely. The Zephyrians had underestimated the human ability to organize and defend. In cities like Tokyo and London, people from all walks of life joined the fight. Scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens volunteered to operate defense systems and repair damaged infrastructure. The Zephyrians had expected fear and chaos, but instead they found unity and courage. In the aftermath of the initial battles, the Zephyrians' strategy was thrown into disarray. Their commanders had expected a quick collapse of human resistance, but instead, they saw humans rallying with renewed determination. The Zephyrians' advanced technology, which had seemed unbeatable, was now being countered by human ingenuity. Earth's defense forces used their knowledge of local terrain and urban environments to their advantage, setting traps and ambushing the alien invaders. The Zephyrian commanders, led by Supreme Commander Zaylor, were baffled. They had anticipated human fear and disorganization, but they were met with a level of resilience that they had not prepared for. Zaylor, known for his strategic brilliance, found himself grappling with the unexpected challenge. His once confident demeanor was now marred by frustration and concern. The Zephyrians had been forced to rethink their approach, and their plans were increasingly derailed by the determined human resistance. One particularly surprising event was the defense of the Panama Canal. The Zephyrians had planned to cut off critical shipping routes to weaken global supply lines. However, human engineers and soldiers worked around the clock to fortify the canal defenses. When the Zephyrians launched their attack, they were met with a well-coordinated counteroffensive. Human forces, using both old-fashioned tactics and new technologies, managed to hold off the alien advance and protect this crucial choke point. Were proving to be a formidable adversary. The once straightforward invasion was now a prolonged and costly struggle. The Zephyrians had to admit that their initial assessment of humanity was gravely mistaken. The humans' bravery and resourcefulness were turning the tide, and the Zephyrians were struggling to adapt to this new reality. As the resistance continued, the Zephyrians faced mounting challenges. The Zephyrians' disbelief grew with each passing day. The humans, whom they had expected to be easily defeated. One of the most significant turning points came during a critical confrontation in the heart of Europe. The Zephyrians had targeted Paris, intending to crush one of the world's cultural and strategic centers. The city had been heavily bombarded, and the Zephyrians believed they had weakened the human defenses enough to secure a final victory. However, the Zephyrian commanders had underestimated the resilience of the French resistance fighters. In a bold move, a coalition of human forces launched a counterattack. Using guerrilla tactics, they struck the Zephyrian supply lines and communications networks. The Zephyrians were caught off guard as human fighters, equipped with new technology and armed with a fierce determination, began to disrupt their operations. The counterattack not only retook key areas, but also forced the Zephyrians to retreat from Paris. The victory was a major morale boost for humanity and a significant blow to the alien invaders. As the news of the Paris victory spread, other regions rallied to the cause. In the Pacific, the city of Sydney became a symbol of human resilience. The Zephyrians had attempted to establish a foothold in Australia, believing it to be a weak point. However, the Australians, with their coastal defenses and innovative tactics, launched a series of successful operations against the alien forces. They used the rugged terrain to their advantage, setting traps and ambushes that inflicted heavy losses on the Zephyrian troops. The Zephyrians found themselves struggling against an enemy that seemed to adapt and outthink them at every turn. In South America, the defense of the Amazon rainforest became another shining example of human ingenuity. The Zephyrians had targeted the rainforest for its strategic resources, and as a base of operations. However, the local defenders, supported by global volunteers, used the dense forest to launch surprise attacks. They created makeshift barricades and employed tactics that exploited the aliens' unfamiliarity with the terrain. The Zephyrians, who had expected a simple occupation, found themselves entangled in a difficult and costly campaign. The defenders' efforts forced the Zephyrians to reconsider their strategy and spread their forces thinner. The Zephyrian leaders, including Supreme Commander Zaylor, were increasingly frustrated by the turn of events. Their advanced technology and superior firepower had not been enough to break the human spirit. The Zephyrians had underestimated the determination and adaptability of their enemy. As human forces gained ground, Zaylor's confidence faltered. He had to confront the reality that the invasion was not going according to plan. In the midst of these victories, human scientists and engineers continued to develop new technologies to aid in the fight. They improved defense systems, created advanced weaponry, and developed strategies that capitalized on the Zephyrians' weaknesses. The innovation and resourcefulness of humanity became key factors in their successful counterattacks. The Zephyrians were forced to adapt their tactics and rethink their approach. The initial shock of their underestimation had given way to a serious reassessment of their strategy. They had to deal with a determined enemy that was no longer merely defending, but actively pushing back and reclaiming territory. The human victories were not just tactical successes, but also powerful symbols of resistance and resilience. As the battles continued, the Zephyrians faced a new reality. The humans they had once considered weak were now proving to be formidable opponents. The tide of the war was shifting, and the Zephyrians had to confront the possibility that their invasion might fail. The unexpected strength and unity of humanity had turned the invasion into a protracted and costly struggle, leaving the Zephyrians to grapple with the consequences of their misjudgment. As the war dragged on, the Zephyrians found themselves in a deepening crisis. Their initial confidence had been shattered by the unexpected strength and resilience of the humans. What was supposed to be a straightforward conquest had turned into a grueling and costly struggle. The Zephyrian Empire was now facing a situation it had not anticipated. Supreme Commander Zaylor, who had led the invasion with certainty, was now grappling with doubt and frustration. The Zephyrians had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back. Their advanced technology and superior firepower had not been enough to secure a quick victory. Instead, the Zephyrians were dealing with a determined enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. In the Zephyrian command centers, the mood was tense. The alien leaders convened urgent meetings to discuss the dire situation. Zaylor, who had once been confident in the ease of their mission, now faced pressure from his fellow commanders. They were increasingly concerned about the mounting losses and the protracted nature of the conflict. The Zephyrians had expected to dominate Earth with minimal effort, but their plans were falling apart. One of the major issues was the failure of the Zephyrian strategy. The initial bombardments and assaults had been designed to break human morale and force a quick surrender. Instead, these actions had only united the human forces and fueled their determination to fight back. The Zephyrians were now dealing with a highly motivated and resourceful enemy. The humans had adapted quickly, using their knowledge of the terrain and developing new tactics that kept the Zephyrians off balance. The Zephyrian military was also facing logistical problems. The continued resistance had led to a significant strain on their resources. Supply lines were disrupted, and the alien forces were running low on crucial materials. The Zephyrians had to deal with a growing number of wounded soldiers and damaged equipment. The initial plans for a swift invasion had not accounted for these prolonged challenges. Amidst the crisis, there were signs of internal conflict within the Zephyrian ranks. The frustration and failure began to create rifts among the commanders. Some argued for a change in strategy, suggesting that a more diplomatic approach might be necessary. Others wanted to double down on their military efforts, believing that a show of strength might force the humans to surrender. The disagreements among the Zephyrian leaders added to the overall sense of chaos and uncertainty. Zaylor, feeling the weight of the failing campaign, began to explore alternative options. The idea of negotiating with the humans, once considered unthinkable, was now on the table. Zaylor understood that the invasion was not only about military victory, but also about preserving the Zephyrian Empire's reputation and stability. The thought of a protracted war with no clear end in sight was unacceptable. The Zephyrians began to explore ways to communicate with human leaders, hoping to find a way to end the conflict. They sent out feelers for potential negotiations, though they did so cautiously. The Zephyrians were aware that any sign of weakness could embolden the humans further. They needed to present their offer in a way that showed strength but also acknowledged the new reality of the situation. As the Zephyrians tried to navigate the crisis, the humans continued to press their advantage. The ongoing battles and the successful counterattacks had boosted human morale. The Zephyrians, once seen as invincible, were now viewed as a threat that could be defeated. The shift in momentum was clear, and the humans were determined to capitalize on their newfound strength. The alien crisis reached a critical point as the Zephyrians weighed their options. They had come to Earth with the intention of a quick conquest, but were now facing an unexpected and determined resistance. The internal divisions and the growing realization that the invasion was not going as planned forced the Zephyrians to reconsider their approach. The once clear path to victory was now obscured by the complexities of a prolonged and challenging conflict. As the Zephyrian crisis deepened, both sides faced a turning point. The Zephyrians, once so confident in their victory, now had to deal with the reality of a drawn-out conflict. The humans, who had fought fiercely and defended their planet with unmatched determination, stood at the brink of a new chapter. Supreme Commander Zaylor and his team, realizing that the invasion was far from the easy conquest they had anticipated, began to explore new strategies. The internal debates among the Zephyrian leaders had reached a critical stage. Some advocated for continued aggression, hoping to eventually wear down human defenses, while others argued for a change in tactics. They knew that prolonging the war would only lead to more losses and further strain their resources. In a surprising move, Zaylor proposed an unprecedented idea, opening negotiations with humanity. He understood that the Zephyrians had misjudged their enemy and that a prolonged conflict would only lead to more devastation on both sides. The Zephyrians had to find a way to end the war and salvage their standing within the Empire. On Earth, the idea of negotiations was met with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. The human leaders, who had fought so hard against the alien invaders, were initially wary of the Zephyrians' sudden change in approach. However, they recognized the opportunity to end the conflict and bring about a new era of relations between the two species. Negotiations began in a neutral location, a space station orbiting Earth, chosen to avoid any hint of favoritism or bias. Both sides sent representatives to discuss terms for ending the war. The meetings were tense and complex, with each side presenting their demands and concerns. The Zephyrians had to make concessions, acknowledging the strength and resilience of humanity. The humans, in turn, had to address their concerns about future security and the possibility of future conflicts. The talks were not easy, and mistrust lingered on both sides. However, as the days passed, a mutual understanding began to take shape. The Zephyrians admitted that they had underestimated humans and that their initial plans had been flawed. The humans, recognizing the potential for a new relationship, agreed to terms that would ensure their security and pave the way for peaceful coexistence. After weeks of negotiation, an agreement was reached. The Zephyrians would withdraw their forces from Earth and cease their hostile actions. In return, humanity would not only cease its military operations, but also agree to a framework for future cooperation and exchange. The agreement included provisions for cultural exchange, scientific collaboration, and the establishment of diplomatic channels between the two species. The signing of the agreement marked the end of the conflict and the beginning of a new era. The Zephyrians, once seen as invincible invaders, now stood as partners in a new alliance. The humans, having successfully defended their planet, were now poised to explore new possibilities with their former adversaries. In the aftermath of the war, both sides worked to rebuild and recover. Earth, scarred by the conflict, began to heal, and the Zephyrians started to integrate into a world they had once sought to conquer. The initial mistrust gradually gave way to a cautious optimism. Humans and Zephyrians collaborated on various projects, from technological innovations to cultural exchanges. The new relationship was not without its challenges. Old prejudices and lingering fears needed to be addressed, and both sides had to learn to work together in ways they had never imagined. However, the initial steps toward cooperation showed promise. The Zephyrians were no longer seen as conquerors but as partners in a shared future. The humans, having proven their strength and resilience, looked forward to a new chapter in their history. As time went on, the once hostile invaders became allies. The conflict that had seemed endless gave way to a new understanding. The Zephyrians and humans, having faced their differences and found common ground, began to build a future together. The war had ended, but its legacy was a reminder of the strength and determination of humanity and the possibility of forging new beginnings from the ashes of conflict.